It finally happened. Red Bull have lost a race this season, and what a race it was. What a way for someone else to win the race. The smooth operator in a Ferrari, and Ferrari won that race, surprisingly, with a great strategic tactical race. It's a race that George Russell, Mercedes, should have won, but in this video I'll go over how Ferrari actually got the tactics spot on for like the first time in their lives. Wow, that's all I can say at the moment. Wow, because we've been watching the races all year long and we've pretty much said that remove Max Verstappen from the front and then we'll have an entertaining race. It's as simple as that, and we had that this weekend. It also proves two things about a Formula One. One, you don't need overtaking all the time to make racing exciting, and two, sometimes racers are a slow burner. So if you gave up at the beginning of the race, then you missed out on a barnstorming end to the race. Obviously, Red Bull being the top team to beat, from the car being unbeatable, it turned into undrivable, which is crazy to think. For some reason, they just could not get the car to work, just couldn't get it into the right window. Horner saying they couldn't get it into the right window with the tyres. Max said after qualifying the car's just bottoming out in the braking zones. It's nervous out the back. There's no traction, no grip. It was just crazy to see such an amazing team with an amazing car struggling for some reason on Singapore. Like, both Red Bulls got out-qualified by Haas's. Is that something you could have predicted at the start of the season? No. Is that something you could have predicted going into this weekend? No. Back to the race. So that was such a good race and such a tactical, awesome race, that a race that looked like a race for Russell to lose if you looked from the outside looking in. Obviously, the Ferraris were quick over one lap. The starting grid was Sainz, Russell. And if it was just a head-to-head race between Sainz and Russell, then Russell would have won that race. It's advantage Mercedes with their race pace. We all know that these new rules with the Ferrari, that they're good over one lap, but then when it comes to race distance, they eat up into their tyres. So that's one advantage that Mercedes had over Ferrari. The times they did in a long run pace on Friday backs up that Mercedes were quicker over race distance, with Sainz doing a 32.6 average lap times, whereas the Mercedes were 32.3. But the thing that Ferrari had in their pocket was Leclerc. So they were first and third on the grid. So it was Sainz, Russell, Leclerc, and then Norris. Critically, it was Norris, not Hamilton, and then Hamilton fifth. So Ferrari had the advantage that they had two cars against Russell. But let's not forget that this race was borderline between a one-stop and a two-stop race. But what Mercedes had in their advantage over Ferrari was that they had two brand new medium tyres over Ferrari's one set of medium tyres. So Mercedes would be at a strategic advantage if it moved into a two-stop race. So that left Ferrari with a dilemma on Saturday night, trying to work out how they're going to race the race on Sunday. They obviously didn't want Mercedes to use their advantage of the two tyres, of the two brand new medium tyres. And obviously they had their weakness was their own tyres, looking after their tyres. So how were they going to play out this race so that they can have strategic advantage over Russell? So obviously they looked at Leclerc. They had two cars against Russell's and they needed to work together to win this race. So they decided that they needed Leclerc to jump Russell at the start. So they put Leclerc on red tyres. Red tyres obviously softer, gives them a little extra grip off the line. So when the race starts, hopefully they'll be first and second, and then they can control the race that way. So that was their plan. The race started, Leclerc got the jump on Russell, and one critical thing at the start that happened was Hamilton bypassing the corner and then slotting into third place, and then actually holding up Russell a bit, and then obviously there was that half a lap of them two deciding what they're going to do if Hamilton's going to let Russell past. Obviously, don't forget the first lap is one of the main opportunities to overtake on like a street track when people are still trying to settle down, still trying to warm up their brakes and everything, get everything right and settled into their stint. Obviously, that helped Ferrari. That gave them a little gap in the first two laps, and then obviously Hamilton let Russell by, and then obviously he had to let Norris by. That was the first part of the plan sorted. So then Ferrari decided to slow the pace for two reasons. One, they wanted to manage their tyres. They wanted to make sure that they kept their tyres in life. And 2, they wanted to keep the field close together so that there's no opportunity for Russell to, well, other teams, other cars, but mainly Russell, to do the undercut and to stop, get a few laps, and then undercut in front of them. So they managed the pace to keep the field spread low. And obviously keeping the field spread low, it also forces the race into more of a one-stop race, because obviously if you're going to do a two-stop, you need like free space to take advantage of doing that extra stop. So the next thing they did, they told Leclerc to back off from Sainz, so give him some gap. First they said 3 seconds, and then they tried to move him back to 5 seconds behind. They did this for 2 reasons. One, obviously to cover any undercut from Russell, so that if Russell dived in, it gives Sainz of 1 lap to go around and then dive in straight after that. And 2, obviously when it comes to the safety car, there is that little bit of a gap between the 2 Ferraris so that they can double stack in a pit stop. Talking of safety car, obviously the safety car came out. And then everyone dived in, apart from Red Bulls who were on an alternate strategy. But everyone dived in and then they came out. Unfortunately, Leclerc lost out on some time there. But Sainz was in the lead. Safety car came out earlier than expected. So there was a long way to go still. So Sainz went on the radio and said, what's the plan? And the plan was, again, to back up the pack, stop Mercedes having that opportunity to go onto the extra set of medium that they have, the extra brand new set, and stop it from being a 2-stop race. And that was working perfectly. Sainz was working was managing the race. He could have raised the pace by at least easily a second, he said over the radio, and everything was going swimmingly. Until obviously the VSC came in, and then it was a question of what's everyone going to do? Who's going to pit? Who's not going to pit? The 2 Mercedes with their brand new sets of medium tyres decided to dive in. They went for it. From there, it was a matter of clock watching, like looking at the lap times. If you had live timing, this is where you looked at the times, so you know how much time the Mercedes will make up. At the front, Sainz raised his pace a little bit, but he couldn't go too fast because he was trying to keep the tyres and manage the tyres to make sure that he had tyres at the end. Obviously, he could have went a tenth or 2 quicker per lap, but he didn't. He knew he had to keep the tyres relatively alive at the end. This is where Norris and Sainz actually started working together early on. Norris also knew in his head that he also had to manage his tyres because he was trying to get on the podium. He wanted to be on the podium. So he was also managing his tyres, and he knew if he attacked Sainz early on, they'll both lose time. So he was following him. They both got into the management rhythm that they're both doing lap times, trying to manage the tyres, keep them alive at the end and to go for it. Mercedes came up to Leclerc, did him pretty much easy. That's one thing that you could question about the Ferrari tactics. Maybe Leclerc could have dived in at the same time that Mercedes. Obviously, they didn't have a brand new set of mediums, and it was slightly too early for softs to go on. So that's one of the reasons why they didn't go in, because it's too early for softs. But could they have put him on used mediums or hards? Maybe just made it a bit harder for Leclerc to hold up the Mercs. But you know, that's something for a different day. So obviously Mercedes caught up with the lead in 2, and we know what happened there. We know that Sainz then strategically, using his head again, gave Norris DRS. He made it difficult for the Mercedes to overtake Norris. And Norris knew that Sainz was doing that to him, so Norris wasn't attacking Sainz. For some reason, they just knew. Norris knew that with the help of Sainz, he could probably hold on to this second place. And Sainz knew with the help of Norris being that block, he could hold on to this win. Because if Mercedes got Norris, it would have pretty much been an easy DRS overtake over Ferrari. Easy-ish DRS overtake over Ferrari, over Sainz. So he knew he needed to keep Norris there to block. And it was just a tactical move. Even his Ferrari team were just like, it's 1 second behind Norris, 1 second behind you. And Sainz was like, yeah, no, I'm doing it on purpose. He even blindsided his own team. But it's just awesome strategic driving from Sainz. Awesome win from Ferrari tactics. A race that, in theory, should have been Russell's to win. And then talking of Russell, he lost it on the last lap. He followed Norris, clipped the wall, and he just followed Martin Brundle, commentator in the UK, usually says like this: you follow in the train, or you get into the rhythm when you follow the car in front. Obviously, Norris went right, clipped the wall a little bit, and Russell clipped it even harder and lost it on the last lap. What a race! What a race! And I'm wearing this cap, which says "Trust the plan." because Ferrari came out with a blinder, they came out with a plan, and they trusted it, and it actually worked. Hats off to Ferrari, because, you know, all these times when they've had blunders and they've not really pulled off the strategy correctly, this time they did, and hats off to Sainz. This is his second win, and both of his wins have been down to him and his brain and his thinking. Do I think that Red Bull's not going to win the next race now? They've got a problem. I think they're going to easily destroy the field in Suzuka. It'll be back to normal in Suzuka. But I've made 2 videos in the past where I predicted, well, I said that, you know, Red Bull would not win every race this year. Admittedly, I did not predict it to be like this. I thought it was going to be a blunder, you know, or, you know, pit stop drama, something that happens that slows the Red Bulls. I didn't think it'd be on pace that someone would beat Red Bull, but I'm actually glad it was on pace, because Carlos Sainz deserved that victory. He's been performing really well the last couple of races, and Leclerc was nowhere in the end. Nowhere. His tyres were gone. It was 20 odd seconds behind Sainz. 20 odd seconds, you know, Ferrari's golden boy. 20 seconds behind Sainz. So, you know, it was a really good race. Really happy. Yeah, it was awesome. Awesome. If you're interested to see that video where I talk about Red Bull and if they can win every race this year, you can click up here. If not, thank you for watching and enjoy the next race.